This water delivery guy, Park Hun, goes past a playground. A girl sees a coin lying below, and this boy presses it under his foot. The girl says if it is head then it's yours, if it is tail then it's mine. Then the boy looked at it, and it was head. But the boy did not know that it was the head. The girl picks up the coin. The boy tries to snatch the coin from her. Suddenly, he spots her broken finger. Even though the girl is unaware of the injury, Hun quickly identifies the fracture. Taking action, he grabs an ice cream from a child, eats the treat, and repurposes the stick as an improvised plaster cast. Using the girl's hair tie, he secures the stick to support her injured finger. Post-treatment, Hun asks for his fees, but the girl points out that she never requested his assistance. Amid this, the girl's father shows up and escorts her away. The father rushes his daughter, Young Min, to the hospital, where the doctor tells him that her finger is indeed broken, and whoever attempted the makeshift cast did a great job. The doctor then directs a nurse to accompany the patient for an X-ray. However, the nurse guides the father and daughter to follow a blue line on the floor to reach the X-ray room. While struggling to locate the radiology department, they unexpectedly cross paths with Hun, who's there to deliver water containers. As Hun tries to assist them, he notices the father experiencing chest pain. Concerned, Hun places his hand on the man's chest and asks if he experiences breathlessness while sleeping. The father, however, dismisses it, insisting that he is okay. Despite the father's claims of well-being, his visible discomfort suggests otherwise. Before he can be treated, all the doctors are urgently summoned to the emergency department due to a bus truck collision that left 15 people in critical condition. While the medical team attends to the accident victims, Young Min's father begins to lose consciousness. Concerned for her father, Young Min approaches a nurse seeking assistance. Unfortunately, amidst the chaos, nobody takes her seriously, making it difficult for her to get the attention her father urgently needs. Frustrated and desperate for attention, Young Min unleashes a scream, momentarily grabbing everyone's focus. However, the doctors remain occupied with other patients. Amid this, a doctor named Soo Hyun approaches Young Min, inquiring about what she needs. Upon learning about her father's condition, Soo Hyun begins examining him. Unfortunately, another emergency requires Soo Hyun's attention, and she instructs Dr. Kim to take Young Min's father for a chest X-ray and blood tests. Worried about the girl and her father, Hun decides to accompany them. In the elevator, Young Min's father loses consciousness and collapses. Hun and the doctor quickly lay him on the floor for immediate care. Suspecting pneumonia, Dr. Kim hurries to gather the necessary equipment for intubation to stabilize the patient's condition. Hun places his hand on the man's chest and promptly identifies that he's experiencing a cardiac arrest. At that moment, Dr. Kim arrives and starts inserting a tube through the patient's mouth to facilitate breathing. However, Hun intervenes, insisting that the patient is suffering from a myocardial infarction and heart failure. Initially skeptical, Dr. Kim hesitates until Hun firmly orders him to follow his instructions. Upon Hun's insistence, Dr. Kim attempts to listen to the patient's heartbeat and realizes it is indeed a cardiac arrest. Dr. Kim initiates CPR while a nurse fetches the defibrillator. Taking command, Hun uses the equipment to administer an electric charge to the heart, aiming to restore a normal heartbeat. Soon, the patient's heart begins pumping again. He is immediately taken to the operation theater and is prepared for an operation, but the doctors are too busy with the accident victims that they have no time for it. Dr. Kim desperately calls for a surgeon, but no one is available. Seeing this, tears well up in Young Min's eyes. She urges Hun to operate on her father. However, Hun responds that he cannot risk losing his license. As he is about to leave, the girl takes out a coin from her pocket and gives it to Hun as his operation fees, begging him to save her father's life. Seeing distressed Young Min, Hun finally decides to help her. Implementing precautionary steps, he steps into the operating theater. The other doctors quickly identify him as an outsider, but Hun stays strong. As he begins the operation, the onlooking doctors are amazed by his precise cuts that miraculously avoid causing any bleeding. Meanwhile, Dr. Mun, from the hospital, observes the surgery from above. Seeing Hun's skills, he asks Dr. Kim why the patient didn't bleed, to which Dr. Kim responds that he doesn't know. Surprisingly, our regular water delivery guy happened to be one of North Korea's top cardiothoracic surgeons. Despite his ordinary appearance, Hun possessed extraordinary medical skills. There was a remarkable incident when a surgery he performed in North Korea experienced a power outage. However, he skillfully completed the operation, ultimately saving the patient. Despite his exceptional abilities, fate took an unexpected turn, leading him to end up in South Korea. In the present day, Han continues the operation on Young Min's father. Soon, Soo-hyun enters the operation theater and recognizes him as an outsider. She demands he stop the procedure, but Han insists he'll stop only if she's ready to take over. Other doctors support him due to his remarkable skills. The lady doctor suggests to Soo-hyun that they can question the outsider after saving the patient's life. Infuriated, Soo-hyun calls for security. However, before she can guide them in, Han has already disappeared, having completed the operation earlier than anticipated. With security in tow, Soo-hyun searches for Han and eventually locates him. She delivers a slap to Han's face, accusing him of conducting an illegal operation. Han fires back, asserting that she's not one to pass judgment because she abandoned a patient in need. Soo-hyun attempts another slap, but Han stops her, causing her to strike him with the other hand. In the midst of this, Soo-hyun receives a call from Dr. Kim, revealing that the patient is in critical condition, displaying symptoms of polymorphic ventricular tachycardia. Faced with this news, Soo-hyun thinks of involving the police, but Han suggests giving the patient 20 milliliters of magnesium to stabilize his condition, showcasing his surgical knowledge. Meanwhile, Young Min's father receives attention from another senior and skilled doctor in the hospital, Jae-joon. Observing the critical condition, Jae-joon directs his team to administer 20 milliliters of magnesium. Miraculously, the patient stabilizes, leaving Soo-hyun stunned, as the same magnesium treatment was earlier suggested by Han. Even though Soo-hyun acknowledges Han's skills, she insists on having him arrested for conducting an unauthorized surgery. Jae-joon intervenes, telling Han the significance of obtaining permission before operating in a hospital where they are not affiliated. Since the patient's life is saved, Jae-joon releases Han with the condition that he must never return to the hospital. As Han makes his way out, Dr. Mun calls out to him. However, suspecting that Dr. Mun is trying to punish him for what he has done, Han evades the situation and escapes from the hospital. He is running from Dr. Min because he doesn't want to lose his license. Though he doesn't work in a big hospital, he manages to get paid triple the amount of a regular doctor. It is because his patients are gangsters. Because they are wanted, their henchmen are unable to take them to a proper hospital. One day, a patient arrived with an appendicitis. Han began the operation and demanded a substantial sum as a fee. However, when the henchmen tried to attack him instead of paying, he showed them their boss's unstitched wound that would remain open until they paid him. Now, the men were forced to pay Han. Han declined the card payment and ordered them to pay him in cash. When the henchmen tried to pay him half, Han once again inflicted pain on the boss and finally managed to get the full payment. Back to the present day, Dr. Mun attempts to reach Han, but his efforts fall short when Han successfully escapes in his truck. Mun trails him to his clinic and encourages him to join the hospital team. Initially hesitant, Han changes his mind upon seeing a down payment of $50,000. The reason he needed that substantial amount of money traces back to years ago, when Han served as a cardiothoracic surgeon at a military hospital. One day, he was ordered to save a man by giving him a new kidney. The donor was the man's daughter. However, when Han saw a red band on the girl's wrist, he was shocked to his very core. It was the same band he gave to his friend Jae many years ago when they were kids. When he uncovered the woman's face, he learned that the girl was indeed her friend, who went missing after getting kidnapped by the North Korean government. Instead of saving the man's life, Han saved the life of the man's daughter. He fled the area with Jae in his arms, intending to seek asylum. However, his plan went awry when the government turned against him, aligning with the North Koreans who had previously disrupted his life. In a dramatic turn of events, while evading the North Koreans, he found himself cornered. Jae sacrificed herself by taking a bullet meant for Han, and ends up hanging from the railing. In an attempt to save her, Han also got shot. For causing trouble, he was arrested by the South Korean police, which prevented his capture by the North Koreans. Yet, a few days later, he received shocking news. Jae was alive and had been taken back to North Korea. Driven by an overwhelming desire to reunite with his love, Han sought the assistance of Mr. Lim, a person known for rescuing individuals from North Korea. Mr. Lim informed Han that he had located Jae in a North Korean camp, and even provided a video as proof. However, the rescue came at a steep cost. $50,000. Han was struggling with financial constraints until he crossed paths with Dr. Mun. He managed to seal the deal that would enable him to secure Jae-hee's rescue. However, things take an unexpected turn when Chang-yi, Han's friend, informs him that she has seen Jae-hee in the hospital. Han immediately visits the hospital with Dr. Mun and finds Jae-hee there. However, he is unable to locate her. Infuriated at Mr. Lim for lying to him, Han holds him by his collar and demands answers for Jae-hee's whereabouts, saying that he has seen her in the hospital. Mr. Lim responds that he might have seen someone else, because if she was her, she should have contacted her. Reflecting on Mr. Lim's words, Han gradually calms down and exits the store. As he leaves, an unknown person throws money at Mr. Lim, revealing that all orders related to Han and Jae-hee are orchestrated by this mysterious figure. Upon agreeing to collaborate with Dr. Mun, Han receives checks of $50,000. He promptly hands the amount to Mr. Lim. However, a surprising twist unfolds as Han tears all the checks in half, giving only one portion to Mr. Lim. He declares that the remaining halves will be given once the task is completed. With these words, Han departs from the store, leaving Mr. Lim visibly frustrated. Han is finally hired by the hospital, but he and Soo-hyun remain at odds, with him labeling her as a quack and her perceiving him as someone who disregards the law. One day, a patient's condition suddenly worsens and the doctors feel helpless. She had signed a DNR form, meaning they cannot perform life-saving measures like CPR. Han, however, can't bear to watch her die. He desperately uses electric shocks and CPR to revive her. During the procedure, Han notices a familiar band on her wrist, the same one he gave Jae-hee. Eager to find out how she got it, he calls the hospital where she was transferred, but they have no information. Meanwhile, Soo-hyun learns of Han's actions and is furious. Unlike Soo-hyun, Han is determined to keep the patient alive so he can question her about the band. He begins intense practice for the difficult tumor removal surgery. On the other hand, Soo-hyun is seen standing near the patient. It is revealed that the woman is her mother, who left her when she was a child. Soo-hyun begged to stay with her mother, but the woman rebuked her and ordered her to stay with her wealthy dad. Until now, Soo-hyun is unable to understand why her mother left her. She didn't want her to suffer more, so she was infuriated at Han's actions. However, when her mother regains consciousness for a moment and grabs her hand, Soo-hyun decides to do whatever it takes to save her life. She calls Jae-jun, who is also her boyfriend, and begs him to save her mother's life. However, Jae-jun can't help her as he is instructed by the patient's guardian, aka Soo-hyun's dad, not to do her surgery. It is because there are only 5% success chances, and they can't do such a surgery in which they are sure that the patient will die. Desperate to be with her mother again, Soo-hyun turns to Han, handing him the coin as a fee, and urging him to perform her mother's surgery. Han, moved by her plea, agrees to assist. The patient is brought into the operating room, and soon, Han joins the surgical team. Soo-hyun's father, Dr. Oh, who is also the hospital owner, orders Han not to proceed with the operation. Despite Dr. Oh's instructions, Han insists he has permission from the patient's guardian, Soo-hyun. The operation commences, and Jae-jun, Soo-hyun's boyfriend, joins Dr. Oh outside the operating room. Initially, everything goes smoothly until the patient's condition takes a turn for the worse. Experiencing heart failure during tumor removal, she tragically loses her life. Though the operation ends, Soo-hyun is unable to accept her mother's death. Distraught, she starts operating alone, ignoring Han's attempts to intervene. Unwilling to face the harsh reality, Soo-hyun is lost in her grief. In this challenging moment, Han stands by her side, offering comfort and support. Jae-jun, witnessing Soo-hyun embracing Han, feels displeased with the situation. The next day, a meeting is called to discuss Han's actions during Soo-hyun's mother's operation. Jae-jun takes the opportunity to criticize Han, pointing out that the surgery was pursued despite knowing the patient had a slim chance of survival. Acknowledging the mistake, Han apologizes to Soo-hyun. Soo-hyun urges everyone to move forward, accepting that the surgeon did his best. However, Jae-jun refuses to let the matter rest. He accuses Han of performing the operation solely for financial gain. Surprisingly, instead of refuting the accusation, Han admits to the allegation. It appears that he chooses not to reveal Soo-hyun's desperate plea for the surgery. Han instructs Jae-jun to drop the issue. As he is about to leave, Han is stopped by Jae-jun. This time, Han retaliates, accusing Jae-jun of selecting patients based on their chances of survival. Jae-jun, aware of his mistake, remains silent and refrains from responding. After everyone departs, Soo-hyun talks to Jae-joon, telling him that he may be taking his frustration out on Hun due to his inability to operate on her mother. Jae-joon is not happy to hear Soo-hyun taking Hun's side. Later, Soo-hyun visits her mother's home but finds it locked. Soon, she encounters Jae-hee, who turns out to be her mother's previous doctor. Jae-hee introduces herself as Sung-hee and unlocks the door, allowing Soo-hyun to enter her mother's home. Inside, she reveals a collection of photographs of important events in Soo-hyun's life. It indicates that her mother had been observing her all this time. Jae-hee explains that Soo-hyun's mother believed she would be happier with her wealthy father. She feared Soo-hyun would resent her if she didn't give her to him. Hearing this, Soo-hyun breaks down, seeing her mother's face in place of Jae-hee. Jae-hee provides comfort during this emotional moment. On the flip side, Hun receives a call from Mr. Lim, who informs him that he has located Jae-hee. She instructs Hun to meet near his clinic with the remaining pieces of the checks. However, before Hun can discuss further with Mr. Lim, a mysterious man emerges from behind. He shoots a truck, causing it to collide with Mr. Lim's car. That man turns out to be Jin-soo, the North Korean officer. It was under his watch that Hun managed to escape. His superiors accused him of betrayal, cut his finger and kicked him out of the organization as a punishment for losing Hun. Now, he wants to take revenge on Hun, but there is another mission he and Jae-hee are working on. Back in the present day, Mr. Lim is critically injured and urgently needs surgery. Hun rushes him to his clinic and prepares for the operation. Dr. Mun arrives and attempts to stop Hun, advising him to wait for an ambulance. However, Hun, unwilling to delay, proceeds with the surgery. During the operation, he discovers that a rib bone broke and pierced into Lim's heart. Despite the dim lighting, Hun skillfully performs the surgery, successfully removing the bone from the ventricle and stitching the wound. Dr. Mun is astonished at Hun's ability to operate in such challenging conditions, with low lighting and less equipment. Shortly after, the ambulance arrives, and Mr. Lim is transferred to the hospital for further treatment. However, after some time, Hun struggles to locate Lim in the hospital. He inquires the receptionist, but no one seems to know his whereabouts. Just then, Hun receives a message from Lim's number, stating that he is heading to China and won't be in touch again. When Hun tries calling Lim, his calls go unanswered. As the phone is now in Jin-soo's possession, it is revealed that Jin-soo was the one who orchestrated Lim's disappearance from the hospital. If Lim had disclosed Jae-hee's location to Hun, Jin-soo's plan would have been ruined. Suddenly, it dawns on Hun that Chang-yi had mentioned seeing Jae-hee in the hallway. Realizing the facility is equipped with surveillance cameras, he decides to review the CCTV footage to verify Jae-hee's presence. He attempts to access the security room, but the guards kick him out. Upon learning about Hun's girlfriend from Chang-yi, Soo-hyun decides to lend a helping hand. At night, they discreetly enter the security room and zoom in on Jae-hee's face, but the image is too blurry for them to recognize her. However, upon seeing the girl in the footage, Soo-hyun recalls encountering her during the visit to her mother's house. To get a clearer look at Jae-hee, Soo-hyun accompanies Hun to his apartment, where they watch the video of Jae-hee in the camp. Soo-hyun immediately recognizes her as the woman who treated her mother. Eager to learn more, the duo heads to the hospital, where Soo-hyun's mother had been treated. There, they inquire about a woman named Jae-hee, but find nothing. As they stand outside the hospital, Jae-hee walks towards them. Tears fill Hun's eyes, as he can hardly believe that Jae-hee is standing right before him. Presenting the band to her, Hun inquires if she recognizes him. However, Jae-hee declines to acknowledge him, stating that she made the band for her patient. Despite Hun's attempts to jog her memory, Jae-hee shows no signs of recollection. Tired of Hun's persistent questioning, she firmly instructs him to leave her alone. Hun follows Jae-hee inside the hospital, with Soo-hyun attempting to stop him. Unyielding, Hun grabs Jae-hee's arm, trying to trigger her memories. Claiming she needs to check on a patient, Jae-hee excuses herself, leaving Hun disheartened. Soo-hyun remains by his side to offer comfort. She then shows him Jae-hee's social media profile, pointing out that unlike his real girlfriend, this Jae-hee doesn't smile much. As Hun views a photo of Jae-hee with her supposed parents, he's shocked to realize they aren't the parents he used to know. Distraught by the entire situation, Hun turns to alcohol, expressing to Soo-hyun that he will hold on to Jae-hee no matter what. Soo-hyun, feeling a tinge of jealousy, points out that Jae-hee is someone who constantly thinks about her and loves her deeply. In response, Hun questions if Jae-joon loves Soo-hyun the way he loves Jae-hee. Soo-hyun counter-questions whether anyone loves her as intensely as Hun loves Jae-hee. As Hun begins to lose consciousness, Soo-hyun tenderly touches his face, revealing her care for him and possibly hinting at deeper feelings. Witnessing Soo-hyun's concern for Hun, Jae-joon calls her and inquires about her whereabouts. Aware of Jae-joon's dislike for Hun, Soo-hyun chooses to lie to him. Having already seen the two embracing each other, Jae-joon becomes increasingly suspicious of their relationship. Upon receiving a call from Soo-hyun, Jae-hee arrives, but by this time, Hun sees her as a dream and drifts into sleep. With Hun asleep, Soo-hyun decides to take him to her mother's house. As she places him on the bed, Hun, still in a semi-conscious state, reaches out and embraces her as if she were Jae-hee. This moment intensifies Soo-hyun's feelings for Hun, further complicating their emotional dynamics. Observing Soo-hyun and Hun's closeness, Jae-hee becomes jealous and directly questions Soo-hyun about their relationship. After clarifying the misunderstanding, Soo-hyun explains the resemblance between Jae-hee and Hun's girlfriend, helping Jae-hee understand the reason behind Hun's odd behavior. The next day, Jae-joon confronts Hun and demands that he stay away from Soo-hyun. When Hun refers to her as the quack, Jae-joon loses his temper, grabbing him by the collar and warning him not to speak about Soo-hyun in such terms. As the confrontation escalates, Soo-hyun arrives, prompting Jae-joon to release Hun and apologize for his behavior. Dr. Mun discovers what Hun is going through and inquires if Jae-hee resembles his girlfriend. Hun responds that she doesn't just resemble his girlfriend,